We continue with our evening lectures, and obviously we have a very special lecture tonight. One of the great philosophers in our program, the one we love very much because he is in so many ways a role model for us. It is quirky, always non-traditional, always never like the other style. Last time he came here and said, I wish I could have sent my clone, you know, so we never know who is here tonight. And he would love you all to learn German, so next time he can deliver, or French, both is fine with him. And as you know, I consider not only to let people into the program in the future who speak either one. Anyway, Jean Baudrillard is a philosopher always of the Höhe der Zeit, always addressing what's going on in life. It's not running back to the Greeks, so he's running forward into the future. And we wish to follow him. Please.
So I apologize for my English. We will speak about the violence of the image and the violence done to the image. At first, we will point at three forms of violence. The primary form is that of aggression, of oppression, of rape and spoiling, the unilateral violence of the most powerful. Another form is that of historical, of critical violence, the violence of the negative and the transgression of revolt and revolution, including maybe the violence of analysis and interpretation. Both are determined forms of violence, effects that are related to specific causes and to whatever form of transcendence, be it that of power, of history, or of meaning. These are, I would say, the violence of the first type and of the second type. But now we have to deal with the violence of the third type, a very different one, more radical and subtle, the violence of deterrence, of consensus and control, of hyperregulation and deregulation together, the violence of the virtual, a meta-violence in some way, a violence of forced consensus and interaction, which are like the plastic surgery of the social, therapeutic, genetic, communicational and informational violence, but first of all, the violence of transparency, which tend to eradicate by the way of prophylaxis, of physical and mental regulation, the very roots of evil, of negativity and singularity, including the ultimate form of singularity, which is death itself. Violence of a general extradition of conflict, of death, violence which paradoxically puts an end to the violence itself, and which therefore cannot be balanced except with radical denegation, with pure abreaction to the whole state of things, a pure violence without object anymore, without determination. This is the typical violence of information, of media, of images, of the spectacular, connected to a total visibility, a total elimination of secrecy, be it of a psychological or mental, or of a neurological, biological or genetic order. Soon we shall discover the gene of revolt, the center of violence in the brain, perhaps even the gene of resistance against genetic manipulation. Biological brainwashing, brainstorming, brain lifting, with nothing left but recycled, whitewashed, lobotomized people as in Clockwork Orange. At this point, we should not speak of violence anymore, but rather of violence, inasmuch that it does not work frontally, mechanically, but by contiguity, by contamination, along chain reactions, breaking our secret immunities, and operating not just by a negative effect, like the classical violence, but on the contrary by an excess of the positive, just as a cancer cell proliferates by metastasis, by restless reproduction, and an excess of vitality. That is the point in the controversy about the violence of screens and the impact of images on people's mind. The fact is that the medium itself has a neutralizing power, counterbalancing the direct effect of the violence on the imagination. I would say the violence of a third type annihilates the violence of the first and second type, but at the price of a more violent intrusion in the deep cells of our mental world. The same as for antibiotics. They eradicate the agents of disease by reducing the general level of vitality. When the medium becomes a message, that's Mark Luan of course, then violence as a medium becomes its own message, a messenger of itself. So the violence of a message cannot be compared with the violence of the medium as such, with the violence emanating from the confusion between medium and message. It is the same with viruses. The virus also is information, but of a very special kind. It is medium and message, agent and action at the same time. That is the very origin of its violence, of its uncontrollable proliferation. In fact, in all actual biological, social or mental processes, violence has substituted violence. The traditional violence of alienation, of power and oppression has been superated by something more violent than violence itself, the violente, the violence. And while it was an historical and individual subject of violence, there is no subject, no personal agent of violence, of contamination, of chain reaction, and then no possibility to confront it efficiently. The classical violence was still haunted by the specter of the evil. It was still visible. Violence only transappears. It is of the order of transparency, and its logic is that of the transparency of the evil. The image, and more generally the sphere of information, is violent because what happens there is the murder of the real, the vanishing point of reality. Everything must be seen, must be visible, and the image is the site par excellence of its visibility. But at the same time, it's the site of its disappearance. And that something in it has disappeared, has returned to nowhere, makes the very fascination of the image. Particularly in the case of all professional images, of press images, which testify of real events. In making reality, even the most violent, emerge to the visible, it makes the real substance disappear. It's like the myth of Eurydice. When Orpheus turns around to look at her, she vanishes and returns to hell. That is why the more exponential the marketing of images is growing, the more fantastically grows the indifference towards the real world. Finally, the real world becomes a useless function, a collection of phantom shapes and ghost events. We are not far from the silhouettes on the walls of the cave of Plato. A wonderful model for this forced visibility was Big Brother and all similar programs, reality shows, docu-soaps and so on. Just there, where everything is given to be seen, there is nothing left to be seen. It is the mirror of platitude, of banality, of the 0 degree of everyday life. There is a place of a fake sociality, a virtual sociality where the other is desperately out of reach. This very fact illuminating perhaps the fundamental truth that the human being is not, perhaps not a social being. Moreover, in all these scenarios, the televisual public is mobilized as a spectator and judged. It has become itself Big Brother. The power of control and transvisuality has shifted to the silent majorities themselves. We are far beyond the panopticon, the famous panopticon, where there was still a source of power and visibility. It was so to say, a panexopticon. Things were made visible to an external eye, whereas here, these new forms, they are made transparent to themselves, a panendopticon, thus erasing the traces of control and making the operator himself transparent. The power of control is internalized, so to say, and people are no more victims of the image. They transform themselves into images. They only exist as screens or in a superficial dimension. All that is visualized there is in the Operation Big Brother, and others, is pure virtual reality, a synthetic image of the banality produced as in a computer, the equivalent of a ready-made, a given transcription of everyday life, which is in itself already recycled by our current patterns. The question is there any sexual voyeurism? Not at all. Almost no sexual scenery, but people don't want that. What they secretly want to see is the spectacle of the banality, which is from now our real pornography, our true obscenity, that of the nullity of insignificance and platitude, that would be the extreme reverse of the theatre of cruelty by Artaud. But maybe in that scene lies a certain form of cruelty too, at least of a virtual one. At the time when media and television are more and more unable to give an image of the events of the world, then they discover the everyday life, the existential banality, as the most criminal event, as the most violent inactuality, as the very place of the perfect crime. And that it is, really. And people are fascinated, terrified, and fascinated at the same time by this indifference of the nothing to see, of the nothing to say, by the indifference of their own life as of a 0 degree of living. The banality and the consumption of banality have now become an Olympic discipline of our time, the last form of the experiences of the elites. In fact, this deals with the naive impulsion to be nothing, and to comfort oneself in this nothingness, sanctioned by the right to be nothing and to be considered and respected as such. Something like a struggle for nothing and for virtual days, the perfect opposite to the basic anthropological postulate of a struggle for life. At least it seems that we are all about to change our basic humanistic goals. There are two ways of disappearing, of being nothing. In the integral reality, everything must logically want to disappear, automatic reaction to the overdose of reality. There are two ways, either to be hidden and to insist on the right not to be seen, that's the actual defense of private life, or one shifts to a delirious exhibitionism of his own platitude and insignificance, the ultimate protection against the servitude of being and of being himself. Hence, the absolute obligation to be seen, to make oneself visible at any price. Everyone deals on both levels at the same time. Then we are in a double bind, not to be seen and to be continuously visible. No ethics, no legislation can solve this dilemma, and the whole current polemic about the right to information, all this polemic is useless. Maximal information, maximal visibility are now part of the human rights and of human duties, all the same. And the destiny of the image is trapped between the unconditional right to see and that unconditional as well not to be seen. This means that people are decipherable at every moment, overexposed to the light of information and addicted to their own image. Driven to express themselves at any time, self-expression is the ultimate form of confession, as Foucault said. To become an image, one has to give a visual object of his whole everyday life, of his possibilities, of his feelings and desires. He has to keep no secrets and to interact permanently. Just here is the deepest violence, a violence down to the deepest core, to the heart core of the individual, and at the same time to the language, because it's also, the language loses its symbolic originality, being nothing more than the operator of visibility. It loses its ironic dimension, its conceptual distance, its autonomous dimension, where language is more important than what it signifies. The image, too, is more important than what it speaks of. That we forget, usually, again and again, and that is the source of the violence done to the image. Today, everything takes the look of the image. When all pretend that the real has disappeared under the oppression and the profusion of images, what is totally neglected and forgotten is that the image also disappears under the blow and the impact of reality. The image is usually spoiled of its own existence as image, devoted to a shameful complicity with the real. The violence exercised by the image is largely balanced by the violence done to the image. Its exploitation as a pure vector of documentation, of testimony, of message, including the message of misery and violence, its allegiance to moral, to pedagogy, to politics, to publicity. Then the magic of the image, both as fatal and as vital illusion, is fading away. The Byzantine iconoclasts wanted to destroy images in order to abolish meaning and the representation of God. Today we are still iconoclasts, but in an opposite way. We kill the images by an overdose of meaning. Borges' fable on the people of the mirror is an illustration. He gives the hypothesis that behind each figure of resemblance and representation, there is a vanquished enemy, a defeated singularity, a dead object. And the iconoclasts clearly understood how icons were the best way of letting God disappear. But perhaps God himself had chosen to disappear behind the images, and nobody knows it. Anyway, today is no more the matter of God. We disappear behind our images. No chance anymore that our images are stolen from us, that we must give up our secrets, because we no longer have any. That is at the same time the sign of our ultimate morality and of our total obsession. There is a deep misunderstanding of the process of meaning. Most images and photographs today reflect the misery and the violence of human condition. But all this affects us less and less, just because it is oversignified. In order for the meaning, for the message to affect us, the image has to exist on its own, to impose its original language. In order for the real to be transferred to our imagination, and our imagination transferred to the real, it must be a counter-transference upon the image, and this counter-transference has to be resolved in terms of psychoanalysis. Today, we see misery and violence becoming a leitmotif of publicity, just by the way of images. Toscani, for example, is reintegrating sex and AIDS, war and death into fashion. And why not? Jubilating ad images are no less obscene than the pessimistic ones. But at one condition: to show the violence of publicity itself, the violence of fashion, the violence of the medium, what actually publishers are not even to try to do. However, fashion and high society are themselves a kind of spectacle of death. The world's misery is quite so visible, quite so transparent in the line in the face of any top model as in the skeletal body of an African boy. The same cruelty is to be perceived everywhere if one only knows how to look at it. This realistic image, however, does not coach at all what really is, but what should not be, death and misery, what should not exist from our moral and humanistic point of view, and at the same time making an aesthetic and commercial, perfectly immoral use and abuse of this misery. Images that actually testify, behind their pretended objectivity, of a deep denial of the real and of an equal denial of the image, a sign to present what does not even want to be represented, a sign to the rape of the real by burglary. Murder of the image, crushed by over-information, over-signification, over-reference. Murder of the secret of the image, drawn by hyper-visibility, by unconditional transparency. In a film in Leaving Las Vegas, we look in a scene at a very charming blonde girl pissing and talking and on, perfectly indifferent to what she's saying and doing. A perfectly useless scenery, but which ostensibly testifies that nothing will escape from the mixture of the fiction and the reality, but that all is assigned to a ready to see, ready to act, ready to enjoy. That is transparency, to force all the real in the orbit of the visual, not even representation, pure visuality. And this is obscene. Obscene is all what is unnecessarily visible, without desire and without effect, all what usurps the so rare and so precious space of appearance. The last violence done to the image, the very final violence, is the technological one. Electronic and computerized synthetic images issued from numerical combination, combined and reworked on the surface of the screen. It is the end of the imagination of the image itself, of its fundamental illusion, because in the synthetic operation, the reference no longer exists, and the real has not even time to take place, as it is immediately produced as virtual reality. No direct capture of the picture anymore, no presence of a real object in an irrevocable moment and face-to-face, which constitutes the magic of photography, for example. and of the image generally as acting as singular events. Last glimmer of reality in a world devoted to hyper-reality. Nothing left in the synthetic image of this punctual exactitude, of this punctum, as Roland Barthes said, this punctum in time, which is characteristic of the analogous image. While the photo, according to Roland Barthes, testify of an absence, but something really took place but now went away forever, today the photo, the genuine analogous photograph, would rather testify of a presence, of an immediate presence of a subject to the object, what does not happen anymore in the computerizing of images. Ultimate challenge to the synthetic order which is now overwhelming us. The relation of the image to its referent raised already a lot of problems, both of representation, but when the referent is out of the field, and there is actually no representation anymore, when the real object has disappeared into the technical programming of the image, when the image as pure artifact does not reflect anyone or anything, and does not even go through the phase of the negative, can we still speak of an image? Are in fact televisual, numerical and virtual images are the images at all? Our real world of images will soon cease to exist, and our consumption of images itself will be virtual. If the image, as Plato says, is the confluence of the light emanating from the object and of the light emanating from the eye, then we will soon neither have an object nor an eye, and there's no images anymore. The same problem is for thinking. In the field of artificial intelligence, the thought does not even have time to formulate itself. Maybe the computerization of the image is the perfect mode of the image, and just the same, the computerization of thought, artificial intelligence, would be the achievement of thinking. But just because of this, it is at the same time the total denigration. In the very perfection lies the violence of synthetic images and artificial intelligence. A perfect exorcism of the real as an infant malady of virtuality. And just the same, a perfect exorcism of thought as infant malady of brain engineering. And a perfect exorcism of the image as infant malady of the visuality. That's a bad fate for the image and for thinking and for the real in general. But at the same time, the chance for the genuine photographic image of a pathetic success, as it happens now, of an artificial resurrection, as for an animal species about to disappear. Maybe it is in this symbolic murder of the image an ironical revenge for the murder of the real by the image. The whole dimension of technical, economical and aesthetic values, fashion, market and speculation are drowning the image under the flood. The specificity of the image is that it is in some way a parallel universe, another world, another scene in two dimensions, not to confuse with our universe in three dimensions, our real universe, a world of representation. This dimensionless makes its magic and its power of illusion. All what reintegrates the image in the third dimension is a potential violence done to the image. Not only the spatial dimension of relief and stereoscopy, relief in the stereoscopy, but even that of movement, of time in the movie, or that of meaning and message, all that reintegrate the image in our world and destroy it as a parallel world. Even worse is the absorption of the image in what we would call the fourth dimension, that of the virtual and the cybernetics. We usually believe that every additional dimension is a plus, but on the contrary, every additional dimension annihilates the former ones in their singularity. The third one annihilates the two-dimensional world, that of the image. As for the fourth one, it annihilates all the other, including the three-dimensional world of representation. It's a strange game. The new world, the brave new world of the virtual, is a world of integral reality. As a world of integral reality, and the world of integral reality has no place for a parallel universe like that of the image, then here is the final solution for image and imagination. Something else very dangerous for the image as a parallel universe is the fact that our whole actual universe itself is becoming image. We have to do with a general conversion of our real world in image, the most vulgar form of visibility, and then how is any parallel universe to be distinguished at all? How can the image save its singularity in a world entirely turned into image? Now the question, the crucial question is there still a chance, a real chance for the image to escape this double violence, the one it exerts and the one it endures, in order to find the original power of the image again, the evil genius of the image. Images that resist the violence of information and communication, to recover beyond all signification and aesthetic value the pure event of the image. Resist the noise, the perpetual rumor of the world through the silence of the image. Resist movement, flow, and acceleration through the stillness of the image. Resist the moral imperative of meaning through the silence of signification. And above all, resist this automatic overflow of images and their perpetual succession. Recover the poignant detail of the object, the punctum, but also the moment of acting, of taking the picture, immediately past and always nostalgic. Opposite to the flow of images produced in real time, indifferent to this other dimension of the becoming image of the object, the time itself. The visual flux of actuality does not know anything but change. It does not know the concept of becoming, which is radically different from change. In this flux, the image does not even have time to become image, as in the sphere of information, thought, or even has hardly a chance to becoming thought. In order for the image and for the object to emerge as such, it has to be put in suspense of meaning, in suspense of the tumultuous operation of the world. It must be captured in a single fantastic moment, which is the first encounter, the surprising moment, when things are not yet aware that we are here, and when they have not yet been arranged by analytical order, when our absence is not yet fading away. But this instant is ephemeral. We should not be present to see it. And that does, in a sense, the photographer, hidden behind his lens, himself vanishing, himself disappearing. For this is the price of making objects appear. The price is the disappearance of the subject. In this rule of disappearance and transparency as a secret rule of the image, this one has a close connection to theory. It is the silent consecration of all that which, having achieved itself in the discourse, must now metamorphose itself in something else. And the image is the most beautiful of the metamorphoses of the discourse. It has basically nothing to do with it, but it is as if it had preceded it in an earlier life. In a way, the theory itself, when it reaches its extreme limit, has no open face anymore. It becomes its own mask. It keeps the outlook of analysis, but it has secretly transfused to the outside, to the side of the phenomena, of which there is nothing to say anymore. In this moment, the image appears with all its phenomenological power, with phenomenal power. The photographic image is born out of this phenomenal intuition of the world, following the analytical intuition. Not as transcription, but as transmutation of theory. That is, at least by your own experience of the photographic image as a trans-theoretical object, not as an artistic or realistic activity, but as a becoming image of the object, as becoming image of thought, a symbolic terminal for the analytic process, together with its resolution into an object existing for its own, neither real nor objective. As soon as it becomes an image, the object raises no problems anymore. It is the immediate solution to what is perfectly insoluble from the point of view of analysis. So it would be mutation, metamorphosis, anamorphosis maybe, poetic transference of the analytical situation. The punctum, which is at the core of the image, becomes then the contrapunctum of the theory. I thank you.
Yeah. You are. It's a pity that you could not stay here for 3 weeks, because then you would have encountered in the beginning our filmmakers. We started with Chantal Ackermann, Volker Schlöndorff, Catherine Breillat.
Sure.
And Volker Schlöndorff showed us his film about Beirut. What was the title again?
Circle of Deceit.
Circle of Disease. And the point was to say, should we make an image? Should we report in images about war? Or would the only genuine report is not reporting about it? Because every moment we report about it, we got all excited.
It's a difficult, and I don't understand exactly in English. Okay. I need an.
I give you a German version. No, we don't. She was not here. Also, die Frage, also, die wir am Anfang hier diskutiert haben mit unseren Filmmakers, ist, ob es nicht Phänomene gibt, Auschwitz, der Krieg, denen die Bildlosigkeit das einzig genuine Bild ist, das es noch gibt. Der Verzicht, es in Bilder zu fassen.
Yeah, it is a very crucial question. It has to do even with the images of the war in Iraq and so on. And I will speak rather about that as about these trans events as Auschwitz and Hiroshima. But the question was if it's possible to give a representation of war, of this war in the Gulf War or war of Iraq. And for example, Susan Sontag has discussed this problem and trusts in the information. It's possible to give a real representation of the events, of such events, and to give so the occasion, the chance for people to understand word, to have a signification and to mobilize themselves about this. But I don't believe so. I believe that we are no more in a time of representation. That's what disappears is really a representation. As for images to represent war, they should be different from war. Images must be something different, that a distance from even from the reality of war has to give account of the war itself. And images, actual images, are no different from war. They are so virtual as the war itself. Birds are technologically so close to virtuality. So the violence of images is analogous to the violence of war. And they bring no distance, no possible judgment to the reality of events. Nobody is exactly responsible for this situation. Simply the system of representation is fading away under the pressure of information itself. Information is not at all the place for representation. Representation is another space, another time, and in the real time, what we call the real time, it's a confusion, is a clash between event and image of event, but there is no more of a distance where representation were possible. And then it is a collusion, a clash, which make impossibility to give a real imagination of the events. And that is, I think, the same for extraordinary or for terrifying events, as you say. There is no representation anymore. Maybe more through language than through images. Through images, we believe to have the very fact in the eyes. We have the illusion of reality, and this is a chance less for representation. Then we keep the illusion of having understood what happens. But it's ambiguous because in the last episode in the war of Iraq, where the images, these obscene, these monstrous images were transferred from directly in real time from Baghdad to all net, internet and so on. We could believe that it's a and they had very hard consequences for the States, for the United States, for all the world. The immediacy of these images is in itself virulent. It's like a virus. It expands at once through the whole world. Is it an advantage? I don't know, but I don't believe it. It's an immediate advantage of information, but information is not comprehension, intelligence, or judgment. It's pure information, and it exhausts itself in itself. It doesn't go beyond this wall of information. Information is an endogenous event in itself. Is it tautological, I would say. It generates itself, and it disappears in itself. Oof. I don't know anymore, but
this is a bad news always.
No, bad news.
What I liked about
but you have
also gave us this description, a very clear, also critic or a logical description, what happens to the image in our world, that is something, is also the perfection thing, that what Heidegger calls a Gestalt technology. That is a kind of very good example of this. But there's also the event, how we can protect, or is there still a way to protect the singularity of the image and of thinking, for example. And Heidegger's suggestion were pretty much like yours. He called it the Armut des Denkens. You know, the poverty actually, not power, poverty of thinking. But there is a power in that. You know, also not that you that is the same thing as the filmmakers say. Rather to deliver images, we would rather not do it anymore. We say, here is the Beirut war, and you cannot see anything. Because you have so many images already, not to add new ones to it. Something you said 2 years ago here, you have too much culture already, stop doing the work in culture. So, because there is, it's not just the pollution, so the fact of the overproduction, the over-signifying is already the problem. So the real act in us as filmmakers, you are talking to the beast here, as the filmmakers and people who do these images, is to resist rather than to invent new tricky ways how to do it better. To resist and to wait for the, what I would call the essential image. Is it really necessary? Is it an image which has the right to itself, to its own dimension, to its own world, the two-dimensional world, as you said, and it's not in the service of somebody else? You know, if we would, as the creator of images, have the guts, the Mut, to resist, also zu widerstehen, dass wir alles bebildern wollen. Und zu warten darauf, dass wir wirklich ein Bild finden, das der Bildhaftigkeit selbst
yes, but in order to refine the secret of image is very significant. It's secret. It must not be submitted to transparency and to globality. It must become again initiatic or something like that. Yeah? It must not be diffused and become information. As soon as it becomes information, it's lost as a genuine, as a specific, as a singular image. It's a question of sharing. When all the world shares something, it's nothing anymore. There is not sufficient for all people of the world. Nothing, no information, no images, not a language is sufficient to be shared by all people of the world. That must be a new initiative, or us to find the secret to resurrect an intensity, and so a representation. But it's a reverse, and maybe an optimistic reverse of this. As soon as it's too much, we say this excess of information is intoxication. It makes all exchanges real, exchange of thought, of understanding impossible. Yes, but in the same way, in the same time, the excess of information provokes an abreaction, and the distrust and incredibility of information. And this is a weapon. When all people, we must not think that all people automatically invest information as credible, as a reflect of reality, as a representation. That's maybe an illusion of critical thought, but think that people must be protected maybe against information, against disinformation. But I mean that the excess of information provokes an a sort of immunity against this negative aspect of images and information. Then there is a strange game between the positive and the negative in this very excess of images. But all that is out of control. This excess is out of control, and the result is that information becomes the event in itself. That is, not the event becomes information, but information becomes the very event of our world. And this is a vicious circle. It's actually a vicious circle. Yeah.
Yeah, vicious circle. But it is again the question if silence, Heidegger called it the origin of language, das Geläut der Stille. Is that not only the images, also the word language has to learn to go back to the Armut, to the silence, in order to resist and to get an opening again for a different kind of image.
Sure.
That is what you are after too, that is your feeling that there might be a possibility, and exactly the excess, that what seemed to be so powerful, demonstrates his powerlessness in the moment it turns on our indifference.
Yes.
The images don't work. Even the images of the Abu Dhabi thing, after they have shown it so many times in Arab television, the Arab street is not whatever. It's not Abu Dhabi, Abu something,
Abu Ghraib.
Before I start breaking my tongue, it's just we know what we are talking. What is a word? Nothing. Okay, but let's go and open up for everyone now. The discussion. Here, you have a chance to tell him what is going on after the orgy. What are we going to do after the orgy?
After the orgy.
Yes, that is true. That's my favorite quote of you. After your orgy, what are we going to do after the orgy? That is our, yeah.
Once we enter into this age of the simulation, the simulacra of the image is purely tautological, and information is meaningless. Does it not, in a certain sense, turn us back towards the existential, towards a different type of meaning, towards, you deny it exists, but a reality of living, of the noise of life?
I must have this interpreted.
No, now you can do it in French. Speak French. Chris, it's not Mark. Mark is a bad guy.
Can you ask the question again in a short form?
In a short form? Okay. After the simulacra of the image, where all images are tautological, are we not turned towards the existential, towards the living, towards the noise of life?
Alors après le moment épocal du simulacre et de la tautologie liée au simulacre, on n'est pas poussé plutôt vers une situation où la vie et la réalité retournent d'une nouvelle façon?
I don't think so. I don't think it's a return, a possible return from simulation to the real as it was before, if it was before. If it exists ever suppose a so-called reality. But suppose it was one, as soon as the simulacrum, as the sphere of simulacrum, reality is transfused into its own image, into the image back. It's no possibility of a new evocation of a real as real, because it was a reality is not a fact. That's not reality as factual reality. Reality is a principle. The objects, real objects, don't exist without the caution of a principle of rationality and principle of representation. There is no real without representation. If simulation capture the system of representation, or bring this short circuit of representation, so that there is no distance anymore between the represented and the representant, also politically, of course. Then there is no principle of representation. And then, without representation, it's no real at all. We get in the hyper-reality, and this is a substitution of another reality, what I should call integral reality. That is reality without its principle of representation. Reality deprived of any distance, of any analysis, possible analysis, a pure image of it. And in this short circuit, there is the reality as value, as an order of things, rational order of things, objectivity, and so on, are lost. I mean, there is no region. But maybe it's happens something happens beyond this loss of reality. Hyper-reality is maybe, I don't know, the final point, the final solution, because it has no principle. That it can be disturbed and destroyed by itself. It's a sort of revenge. Hyper-reality is a mechanism, is a big, huge machinery that at an extreme point destroys itself, destroys itself. And the excess of this hyper-reality brings people to this point where they recover a sort of immunity insofar as they don't believe anymore in what is said or in the simulacrum and so on. They consume, they use simulacrums, they use simulations, they are fascinated from it. Yeah. But maybe it's, I hope so, but it remains a field of immunity, of singularity, but it's more and more difficult to share this new chance. But this new chance, I mean, it exists, maybe, but not on the field of reality. It's another field of poetic singularity or initiation or something like that. But no more as an older conventional reality. This is for us lost.
But is it not
obsolete, but maybe it's not a bad fate. Maybe it's a new chance.
And also on this border, an dieser Grenze, nicht? There we learned that it's quite a rich field in which we can invent new descriptive elements like, wow, this is formless. Nicht? Formless is now a form in which we can describe what's going on, and it seems like a joke, but he made his whole living on it, you know, and showed how the artists have really opened up this and allowed us, nicht without form, to encounter form, encounter some description in the world. Also, it is not so that it's just either representation or presence. So on the border, there are many different perspectives are opening up.
Si on est dans une réalité où le principe de réalité est finalement disparu, le signifié devient les choses qui sont pas réelles. Donc si elle dit, moi je trouve beaucoup plus de signifié dans une image créée par l'ordinateur, parce que je n'ai pas le problème d'un signifié qui est perdu. Donc je suis ouverte à des nouveaux signifiés qui ne sont pas dans la logique de la signification qui est liée au principe de réalité.
Yes, but I agree with that. It can be a new game, a big game with computing and so on. Why not? Maybe whether it's an aesthetic game, a game of art. I don't know exactly, but it can be a new game. But it's not the same play, the same rule as before. And from the computer, you can play all your possibilities. It's a new life, indeed. Yes, in the past life, we have no innumerable possibilities as such, but there's a pure effectuation, realization of all possibilities. But is that an enrichment or a impoverishment? I don't know, because maybe it's not the best to dispose of all possibilities of actualization of your desires, of your ideas, of your imagination through the screen, through the digital form, and so on. Maybe there is no place then for instance, for the absence, for the lack of something, for the disappearance. All becomes positive, and you are born in a positive world, in an all positive world. And I don't know if it's a plus or a minus.
Yes.
It seems that there is a possibility of silence in the fact that the majority of images are busy doing violence against each other and not the spectator.
Alors, il y a une possibilité du silence du moment que la majorité des images sont en train de se faire violence entre elles et pas envers les spectateurs. Donc, il y a, c'est une description effective de la situation.
Yeah, but this science is not very... Is it science through annihilating images by each other? Yeah?
I say that there is a possibility for silence.
Good silence. You have to make it a good silence.
A good silence.
Not a dead silence.
Oh, you mean he says it should be a good silence, huh?
No, what are you saying?
I'm saying it is. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm saying I think there's a good silence in the fact that the majority of most images are too busy doing violence against each other.
Il y a un silence positif qui est produit de la violence des images entre elles. Donc nous, on est d'une certaine façon protégés parce que c'est pas vers nous.
Yeah, maybe, but what are you doing with this silence? What are you doing after the orgy of images?
Showing that the noise is...
What is left as seduction? If you look at images, you assist to the respective annihilation of images. Nothing is left on the screen. Is it a silence? It's always the same question. You are alone with yourself, but it's not sufficient to create a silence or secret or the I don't know, for this absence. I mean the absence, be it in whatever. The absence is very vital. Absence and illusion, not simulation. Illusion are vital. I don't know if we can recreate this magic area in the middle of tumultuous images or violent images to find this miraculously this area of silence, of secret, and so and absence, and so on. I doubt about that.
But you see, being...
But maybe it can be a subjective experiment. You can experiment that, maybe individually.
But it is, I think he's talking about this Heideggerian silence as an origin of all languages. And you say, this is because there is no orgy here, so it's the indifference which all this fighting of the words and images allow us. We turn around in the beginning, in the openness of something, you give space for something which will appear. It gives new images. Not you do it, so you are prepared to acknowledge the phenomenon, but you have to have the opening for this. Also ohne die Lichtung, ohne die Stille gibt kein neues Denken, kein neues Bild erscheinen. Das ist die Silence, die er meint und die dadurch entsteht, dass die anderen sich die Köpfe einschlagen und man sich davon zurückzieht. Nicht? Und sagt, hier ist mein Platz und ich warte, dass etwas geschieht und wenn es geschieht, dann werde ich es aufnehmen können.
Yeah, you can so the photography I spoke about photography was the same. It's the same process in the not in the visuality, but in the photography image. The only chance is to make the void around the object, in order that the object appears, and to let the object appear through so making a void, a silence around the object. Not the photographer, not the subject, the photographic subject acts. The object acts, or acting out of the object. But you must, in order that that happens, you must be the agent of void, of the absence. There is no direct relation between subject and object, so mechanical objective relation, and the object, the subject imposes his vision, his look upon the object. And in this sense, there is no good images. There is no photographic images in the strong sense of the term. I mean, the object makes the work. The object works and acts autonomously and maybe against and beyond the subject and the subjectivity. Maybe it's the same way, in the same way. We must not trust in the subject, not at all, no more.
But we must trust that the subject is there, ist da sein.
Yeah.
It's still there, to be there when it happens. Okay. Tony.
Okay, two questions. Okay, number one, in passwords, okay, I think you might have been asked before. The last page, you mentioned that thought must be catastrophic and yet humanist at the same time. So can you elaborate on what is humanist and what you mean by catastrophic? Yes.
No, we spoke already about that. There's no matter with humans.
Okay. Second question.
That's wrong way.
But the answer is that it's not humanist.
It's not humanist.
No,
It's a bad translation.
No.
Bad translation.
Yeah.
It's a wrong translation, or I said a weakness of me.
Okay, the second question is that in another book, Fragments, you mentioned that the strategy now is no longer us against them, but viral. So, can you explain a bit about that? Where it comes
La stratégie.
Ce n'est pas nous contre eux, mais c'est une stratégie virale. La stratégie dominante, the dominant strategy
is viral. Yeah. You suggested the strategy.
Yes.
It's an interview in
Maybe.
Fragments.
I mean, the system is viral, and the system and the visuality is viral in this sense. That is works for contamination, for chain reaction, and so on. The order, the virtual order, is viral. Between virtual and viral is a close connection. And I say that's the strategy of the system. But maybe we can oppose. We can no more oppose an old strategy of resistance through rational values and so on, and substitute the old violence to the new violence. I mean, that is no way. Yeah, there is no way. We must be more viral than the system itself, maybe. And in this sense, we must be viral in other sense. We must invent a paradoxical, enigmatic, ambiguous thought, way of thinking, to be more, more trickster than the system itself. Yeah. We must push in the same way, in the same logic, but further beyond the inner logic of the system. But we cannot not take account of this virality, because we have to do with that. And if we don't act in this way, we will be defenseless without resistance against it. We will be absorbed by this contamination.
Okay, good. You have been in this class, don't you? No? But we need others. It's Mark.
As a more interactive and more democratic medium, can the computer, the internet, apply human testimony, particularly testimony of those that are closest to the source in numbers, testimony that's either good or bad, crediting or discrediting, to try to restore some orientation towards integrity in image?
Ich übersetze das nicht.
Human testimony.
Oui, donc il dit un nouveau média, bon, pas nouveau, mais l'ordinateur et l'Internet, il ne nous offre pas la possibilité, il parle de ce concept d'un témoignage humain qui nous... You said also integrity?
Okay, can human testimony, good or bad, help to restore integrity, particularly when it's close to the source?
Right. Alors, si le témoignage humain, pour qu'il soit bien ou mal, ça n'importe pas, peut nous amener de nouveau vers une intégrité, towards an integrity which is...
Also, weil die Leute so nah dran sind an dem Geschehen, nah dran sind, deswegen glaubt er, dass die Information mehr integer, mehr vertrauenswürdig ist. Und das Internet ist sozusagen die Möglichkeit, das also allen mitzuteilen.
As a form of integration, of integrality, is the internet the perfect one, yes. But just this is the problem, because we are integrated, but is that a good use of ourselves to be integrated to reach the integrality? Because this reality, this actual reality is actual hyper-reality, is integral reality, and that is the danger. But all be integrated. And when we go to a totality, to a totalization, an integralization, we live in an integral society virtually. Integrism and so on, but it's not only Islamic and so on, fundamentalist. We are in our societies in an attempt to integrate all negative, all resistance and so on. Then the ideal of integrity, I mean, is the most dangerous, and it goes in the same direction as that is the end station, I mean, of computerizing. Of course, it's a total integration of the world, but it's its final solution.
Und John, ich glaube, meinte nicht die Integralisierung, sondern die Integrität.
Ja.
Also wie hängen die beiden zusammen? Gibt es immer noch, dass Menschen sozusagen mit ihrer eigenen Kamera jetzt dabei gewesen sind, als das passiert hat? Müssen wir diesen Zeugen, diesen Witnesses, nicht eher glauben? Ist deren Information nicht vertrauenswürdig, integer, wie wir im Deutschen sagen? Ihr habt das sicher so etwas Ähnliches. Im Französischen hoffe ich. Integer. Nein, gibt es das nicht?
No. Is that testimony?
Ja, das ist also die vertrauenswürdige, the trustworthy testimony, because you have been there, okay? And the internet is just a way to disseminate it, but the real point of view is to say, allows us not to say, because we don't have others, journalists in between. These are the people who are really involved there. Is that not a good thing now to say, okay, here we are breaking the indifference of information because we have a witness. He has been there. He has been shot. Mm-hmm. So I'm shot. I'm shot. Not somebody has shot. I'm shot.
I don't believe that with integrity, maybe it's a quality, it's a good modality of, but today it's impossible that the testimony remains integral, because if it diffuse, if it received, diffused and received, it will necessarily pass through the medium. And it's always the question of the medium. The message in itself may be integral, I don't know, but it's always a medium today. There is no message without medium today for us. You can attempt to recreate a situation with no mediatized, with a pure message maybe from individual to individual, but it's very restricted in a restricted area. If you will testify and give a testimony from an event to other people, yeah, this is a fatality. You must be recaptured by a medium, and the medium altered the testimony.
Okay, Danielle, then Jerry, and then Sonja. This is the sequence now. Danielle.
Okay. Tonight you've spoken about the murder of the real and replaced by the image, the murder of the image, the murder of the imagination, the murder of meaning and reference. And I'm just wondering then, what do you think we have left?
Wait.
What do we have left after all
What?
of this is
Alle
done?
sind ermordet. Wer bleibt am Ende des Films?
I would say that's your problem.
Nur left, Danielle.
Okay, okay, right.
Jerry.
Yeah. Okay, so I wanted to actually just two very quick things. A, are you saying in fact the best image is the one not taken? B, would there have been an Iraqi war had no journalists shown up?
He has not said that. That was something I suggested to him. That is not his. He would not say that we should not make images. No? Sie fragt dich, ob du da meinst, dass man keine Bilder hätte vom Iraqi War nehmen sollen, und wenn man keine Bilder hat, gäbe es dann diesen Krieg überhaupt? Gibt es einen Krieg, gibt es ein Event without images?
Without image. But there is no event, whatever, without images today. It's even, we can say it's a recession of images on the event. We can imagine that there is images without event. It's already the case. It's often the case. Maybe there is not possible that anything happens without representation. Without representation, it's nothing. It has no signification. It's I will say. The question is not that is any war happens, it happens a war or it doesn't happen. The question is, has this event a sense, a signification? Can it be represented or not? That's the question. The question of whether any reality exists outside of our look, our eyes, our world. If something something like this happens, we don't know about that. It doesn't exist. It has no existence. As for existing, in order to exist, it must be either represented or mediatized or something like that. We could think metaphysically think about a reality out of our reach, of our judgment, but it's useless. Why? We cannot deal with that. We can only deal with refracted events, and today refracted not in our imagination, not in our mind, but refracted on the screens. There are overall screens, and things happens only on screens. On the way, in the other way, I don't know, but it's other thing on screen, and there is a mutation from a stage of a mirror, that was the stage of representation, to the stage of screen, our stage, yeah. But it's no more a stage of representation. It's a pure reflection on a superficial dimension, and we are we become respectively screens too. We are screens, interactive screens with the medium.
Sonia, last one, please.
I just have a question. The first one is when talking about silent majority, it would entail that somehow in the way that they consume the image, it become homogeneous. That is the first question. And the second question is that, for example, through the computer, they have some elements where protests happen against the war. The free trade protest that was up here in the U.S. it happened precisely through the organization of the internet. At least the internet, the exchange of the internet was the medium that they used to make possible those protests.
De la deuxième question, on parle de la deuxième parce qu'elle dit, en effet, l'Internet, par exemple en Amérique, a offert à des citoyens, à la majorité silencieuse, la possibilité de protester contre la guerre en Irak. Donc, d'une certaine façon, c'est un médium positif, au moins à ce niveau-là. Et la première question was about English, but I didn't hear it. Did you catch it, Wolfgang?
Why don't you ask her again?
She can ask in French.
Sorry, why don't you ask her?
Why don't you ask him in French? Okay, that's a good question. Sonia.
Mais la question que je voudrais faire, c'est que quand vous pensez au sujet de la majorité silencieuse, il y a une manière de dire qu'il y a une homogénéisation dans la manière qui font l'interprétation au sujet de l'image qu'elle comment on dit oui.
You mean if silent majorities have an interpretation of the images they receive? C'est pas exactement. C'est difficile.
Elle dit que si vous pensez que la majorité silencieuse consomme les images de façon à devenir homogène. Is that correct? Alors que l'image sert à précipiter cette consommation vers l'homogénéité.
Yeah, there is, of course, a collusion between the massification as a becoming mass of people and the becoming image of the event, of the reality. There is a transaction between both, of course. There is no difference between mass age and message, as said Macron. The transient, the transition, the transit of images, of messages, of signs, of all that. That's a very structure of silent majorities, maybe of masses and of globality, because the first form of globalization, that was the massification, the becoming mass of people, and that has begun before, from the 19th century maybe. There are already it become a massification of objects, a massification of science, a massification of people, not only the silent majorities. There are masses of, and in the becoming mass is when a sign responds to a sign without transit through signification. When it's a direct contamination from a sign to a sign, direct contamination from an individual to an individual. From this is metastasis. This is direct contamination, and from this point there is a mass, and a mass it needs not many people, millions of people. No, today